So I'm going to talk about my Debian install here on the Pinebook Pro, and I ran this script that's been posted here by Daniel Thompson. I very much appreciate him posting it, and I'm so happy to be on Debian 10 here on my Pinebook Pro. And so I'm going to go through my slides of everything I've experienced. There's my title. All right, so initially I tried putting home and the root file system directory user, which has system applications and all that, or user applications. I tried to put that on my NVMe. I have an NVMe installed in my Pinebook Pro, and it didn't work. It went straight to the initram fs shell, meaning it didn't boot fully. It booted to that, which doesn't do much. And I don't know why this happened. It would not recognize the file system on the NVMe. Let's see. I'm pretty sure that's what this was in this case. And I am very confident that I had updated my fstab correctly. All right, then I was like, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put the entire root file system on my NVMe and only have the boot directory on the micro SD card. So I updated my fstab. I updated its default U-boot. Its default U-boot. And so I updated its fstab. I updated its default U-boot, and then I ran U-boot update. Let's open up its default U-boot. At least show it. You see here U-boot root, and you can put the UUID there or the label. Or yeah, there are like 3 different options there. I think I probably put the UUID there. So then I updated U-boot. You run this command, and I was so confident that it would work that I did not back up my system files. And it went to the ASH shell, and it was reporting unknown file system, which I do not understand because my NVMe has an ext4 file system. So I don't know if it's something with this 5.7 kernel or what. And I ended up needing to do a fresh install because I didn't know how to recover from it. And then I wised up a little bit, and I only put or kept my home directory on the NVMe. And I kept all the root file system directories on the micro SD card. And for my test, this seems to be faster than the eMMC. I tested reading and writing, and it seems to be, this U1 micro SD card seems to be faster than when I used to use the eMMC, which is the internal storage. I actually don't even have that installed currently. So yeah, I had my home directory on the NVMe for my last install, and it had been encrypted with encryptfs, and so I kept that in place. And so if you have this, I'd kept that in place. So when I did my initial install, I installed all of my applications, including the package encryptfs utils. And so it's actually not in the Debian repo due to a system debug that if you have you are booted and you log in to your profile and you log out, and then another user logs in, then they can still access your home directory unencrypted. Well, I do not have multiple users on my Pinebook Pro, and there are not any other users that I would not trust. So I'm not worried about that. So what I did is I changed my sources to Bullseye, ran sudo apt update, installed encryptfs utils, then I switched it back to Buster again. Yeah, I made sure, with this process, if you're going to use an encrypted home directory from a previous install, you have to make sure your username and password are identical. All right, then I updated its fstab. Then I'm out of my micro SD card, which had my root file system directory, to my desktop machine, and I backed up my original home directory and rebooted, and I was able to log in fine. So here's the issue with mixing repositories like I did. It says the Debian's website says don't create a Franken Debian. And so when I installed encryptfs utils, it installed a dependency from a newer dependency from Bullseye. And then later, I wanted to compile a program. Well, I was unable to install GCC because I had pulled in a dependency of libc6 that was a later version than what GCC on Debian 10 was expecting. So I had pulled in a later version of dependency when I installed encryptfs utils, and so GCC was looking for the libc6 version that goes with Debian 10, not the libc6 version that goes with Debian 11. So I was unable to compile the program, but I'll be able to compile it. It's not a big deal. I'll be able to compile it when I upgrade to Debian 11. So that's why you do not mix repositories, because it creates dependency issues. On this install, Debian 10, it's a minimal install, just the packages I need. Battery efficiency has been incredible. I'm at 29% right now, and I have been using this for quite a while. I worked for the past couple of days on it, not all day long, and I've been working on it for a while today. So it's phenomenal. I absolutely love the battery efficiency. So this install script goes through the normal Debian install, and I chose not to install any desktop environment because I just use Awesome Window Manager, and I use Awesome Window Manager. And so that when you reboot, you end up just at a TTY session. And so what I did is you need to know, if you do this sort of thing, you need to know what your apps are that you are going to install. So so here are my applications that I use. Right there. So I put what the apps that are highlighted there, I put those in a text file all by themselves. And then I had already installed wget. And then I downloaded that text file from my website, and I did this to install all of my applications. Because if you're in a TTY session, you don't have normal clipboard copy and paste functionality. Before this, of course, I had to set up network interfaces, so you need to know how to do that. And I've used Wi-Fi in this before. I've used WPA Supplicant, and that's network interfaces for Wi-Fi. And for whatever reason, I couldn't get it to work. So I used my USB to Ethernet adapter, which is an important thing to have if you use Debian, because they don't have the non-free drivers by default. Make sure you have one of these that works out of the box on Debian, though. USB to Ethernet adapter. Here are a few other things. I edited this. These are a few of my own notes, to set the numlock to off, because I just didn't feel like having that other additional LED lit up. And make sure you go to the Pine64 wiki and install NVMe CLI to enable the power saving options. This is if you have an NVMe drive in there. And I had to set up a systemd file so it worked every time on boot. Screen brightness, I talked about this in another video about the Pinebook Pro. And when I first installed this thing, the volume was way down. So I used Awesome Mixer to turn it up. And it threw me off for a second because the volume was turned up all the way in Pulse Audio Volume Control, PAVU control. And so I was like, why is it so soft? And I realized I just needed to open up Awesome Mixer and turn up the volume level. And I need to copy over my vim config to the root directory. That's not specific to Pinebook Pro, but in general. And I don't know how much of a difference TLP makes on the Pinebook Pro or with ARM64, but I install it and enable it. Systemd settings, I enable it. So I'll reopen that in case I use it again. All right, so I had an update. I had set up my home directory with its fstab I didn't want to retype that UUID because remember, I booted, the initial boot was in a TTY session. So this is what I did. I did, yeah, this isn't accurate. I did that. Sudo bash dash C, which is command, and then I got the block ID, and I grepped my NVMe UUID information, because in that's fstab you have to put the UUID, and I wrote it to the end of fstab. So these angle brackets, there needs to be 2 of those. Otherwise, if there's one, you will overwrite your fstab completely, and that would be really bad. So don't do that. So you need to append it with the double angle brackets. Then I edit it from there in the proper formatting. Let's see. Sure, I'll write the change. So the Debian install runs from an existing install. So I messed up my first install. So what I just did is I just went and wrote I installed Armbian basically. I wrote it to another micro SD card. I put that in. I booted Armbian. I updated Armbian, and then what I did is I have a card reader, and I put that in my normal USB port, and I wrote, I booted the micro SD card Armbian, and from there I wrote the Debian install to another micro SD card via my card reader. Yeah, I'll keep that Armbian copy on hand on another micro SD card. Yeah, I opted for Debian 10, and yeah, it's kind of interesting to not select a desktop environment and just install everything that you need. You need to know exactly what applications are necessary for various functionality. So here's an example. You'll need GVFS backends, for example, for mounting your Android phone. Yeah, I already talked about this. Yeah, I switched, and that's default U-boot. I changed it to verbose mode. I definitely prefer that. Be very careful changing those settings because you don't want to break U-boot. After you edit this file, that's default U-boot. Make sure you run U-boot update as you see here. And where was that? So here's what I did. I took out this part right here to have verbose information on boot. I like to be able to see what's going on and if there's an issue or something like that. Yeah, so normally I set up start X, and if I'll boot to TTY1, and if I'm on TTY1 or TTY2, it automatically runs start X. My .profile file is set up to do this, and so I had done this on my Pinebook Pro, and I do this as well on all my x86 machines. It's just preference. However, there was an issue. I'd close the lid, and my X session would crash. And I had also experienced a couple of kernel panics on this 5.7 kernel within a short time period. So pretty soon after, I was like, well, I'm going to try LightDM. I switched to that, and neither of those things have happened. So LightDM is obviously doing something very different, and so I'm not having those issues at all, which is fantastic. So I'm using LightDM. Make sure you read the known issues. This is linked on Daniel Thompson's GitHub page. Known issues right there. Make sure you read that. I just wanted to fix the only thing I cared about fixing was fixing my media keys for brightness. So the brightness doesn't work. FN and then the brightness keys doesn't work out of the box. So you got to follow those fixes there. So this thing, the performance has been fantastic. Programs, I've got my root file system on the micro SD, and before I had my root file system on the NVMe. It seems to be loading, program seem to load just about the same, just as fast. In fact, I felt like the graphics are a little snappier, working a little better. This system is booting in 20 seconds, and the old system was booting in 35 to 37 seconds. So that's a big improvement. And I don't know, there's something mentioned here about boot time. You can find it on there, and perhaps that's the difference that it's making is the change there. So yeah, kind of installing everything from just a base install TTY session. It takes a little more work and time to get up and running, but I am extremely happy with this install, and the Pinebook Pro in general. And so what I did is I buy my micro SD cards. I just buy them from Walgreens. I buy their Infinitive brand, I think that's what it's called, and because I got tired of getting fake ones on Amazon and online. So what I have a 16 gig micro SD card that the root file system is on, and I went and bought the same exact brand. This is a U1 card, which is the second to highest on capacity, and I have two different card readers, and I just connect them up to my desktop computer, and I use DD to clone them. So I don't change the system files a ton, and so if something were to happen to this micro SD card, I'd just pop in the other one. I also created an IMG backup, a 16 gigabyte IMG backup. I put that on a flash drive, so I'd have that with me in my book bag as well. And so good to have a backup, and that's super easy to have my home directory on the NVMe and then the root file system on the micro SD. I can clone that micro SD very easily, and it goes pretty fast over USB 3. And then my home directory is on the NVMe, and I have all the important stuff synced via Nextcloud, so that's backed up there. And so yeah, I've got my working install on the micro SD, and then I have two backups. And that gives me the ability to upgrade on one, and I'm not worried about, well, what if I need to go back to Debian 10 for a while or whatever. So it works very well for backups. This setup works very well for backups. So very appreciative to have this install script. So I haven't looked into this for myself yet. Works fully. So the Debian kernel is now working fully out of the box. So that's fantastic. And there's also a daily image. I don't know if that's I believe that should be rolled into Bullseye. My installation is working perfect, so I'm not gonna mess with anything. So here it is. Bullseye, the Bullseye kernel version, I think it's 38 onward, everything works on it for the Debian Linux image. So that's the name of this package. It says the same version in SID as in Bullseye. And this is what I'm running. Right there, 5.7 kernel, which is the Pinebook Pro ARM64 kernel. And so yeah, you see this posting here of official Debian support, and you've got this daily image if you want to just write that directly to your micro SD card or your eMMC. But this is going to be probably probably not SID, but what's Bullseye, and will become stable. So it's not the current stable version. So that's the downside of using that directly. So everything's working perfect. I'm so happy. I think that's everything. All right, if you have any questions, feel free to post them below in the comments, and I'd be glad to clarify anything. But I feel very, very happy about this install, and I've enjoyed using it so much. The Pinebook Pro meets all of my needs for my for everything that I do with on the go with mobile computing. I have my desktop machines, but when I'm on the go, this takes care of my needs. Quite happy about it.